I'm standing in a hospital room that costs more per night than my entire year's salary, holding the hand of a man I've known for exactly 47 minutes, and in 3 hours, I'm supposed to marry him. His name is Dominic Chen. Net worth $8.3 billion. Current status, Comatose. And according to the lawyers surrounding his bed like vultures in Armani suits, I'm the only person who can save his empire from being torn apart by his own family. The head lawyer, Margaret Chen, Dominic's aunt, slides a prenuptial agreement across the bedside table. It's 63 pages long. My hands are shaking so badly I can barely hold the pen. "Sign it," she says, her voice sharp as surgical steel. The judge arrives in 2 hours. We have a narrow window before Dominic's father can have him declared incompetent and seize control of Chen Technologies. I look down at Dominic. He's 34 years old, tubes running from his arms, a ventilator breathing for him. 3 weeks ago, a car accident on the Pacific Coast Highway. Traumatic brain injury. The doctors say he might wake up tomorrow. Or never. And I'm supposed to marry him to stop his father from destroying everything he built. I don't understand, I whisper. Why me? Because, Margaret says, and her expression softens for just a moment. You're the only person he ever told us he trusted. The thing is, I don't even remember meeting Dominic Chen, but apparently 5 years ago, I saved his life. 5 years earlier. My name is Nina Reyes. 5 years ago, I was 23 years old, working 3 jobs to pay for my mother's cancer treatments while trying to finish my nursing degree at night. We lived in a 1-bedroom apartment in East LA where the air conditioner only worked on Tuesdays, and the landlord hadn't fixed the water heater in 8 months. I was nobody. Invisible. Just another face in the crowd of people trying to survive in a city built for the rich. The night I met Dominic, I was working my graveyard shift at St. Catherine's Hospital in the emergency department. It was 3:47 a.m. on a Tuesday in August, and I was 6 hours into a 12-hour shift, so exhausted I could barely see straight. That's when they brought him in. He wasn't Dominic Chen, tech billionaire, that night. He was just patient 2847, John Doe, found unconscious in an alley in Koreatown with a stab wound to the abdomen and defensive wounds on his hands. No wallet, no ID, blood alcohol level, 0. Drug screen? Negative. Someone had tried to kill him, and he'd fought back. I was assigned as his triage nurse, standard protocol: assess, stabilize, prep for surgery. But when I was checking his vitals, I noticed something the attending physician had missed. His pupils were unequal. Left pupil 4 millimeters, right pupil 6 millimeter. "Dr. Morrison," I called out, "I think he has an epidural hematoma." Dr. Morrison barely looked up from his chart. "The CT scan shows no head trauma, Reyes. Focus on the abdominal wound." But I'd seen this before. My mother's friend had died from a brain bleed that everyone missed because the symptoms were subtle at first. And I could see it in this patient's eyes. Something was wrong. "Sir, with respect, his pupils are asymmetric and he's not responding appropriately to pain stimuli. I really think..." "Are you a doctor, Reyes?" "No, but..." "Then do your job and let me do mine." I should have backed down. That's what nursing students do. You don't question the attending physician. You definitely don't insist when you've already been dismissed. But something in me refused to let it go. So I did something that could have ended my career before it started. While Dr. Morrison was focused on prepping for abdominal surgery, I went directly to the chief of emergency medicine, Dr. Sarah Patel, who was making rounds. "Dr. Patel, I need you to look at patient 2847. I believe he has a brain bleed that's being missed." Dr. Patel studied me for a long moment. "Morrison cleared him?" "Yes, ma'am, but his pupils are asymmetric and..." "Show me." She followed me back to the bay, examined the patient herself. Her expression changed immediately. "Get him to CT now. Morrison, cancel that abdominal surgery prep. This patient needs a craniotomy immediately, or he's going to die in the next 30 minutes. They rushed him to emergency brain surgery. The neurosurgeon later told me that if they'd waited another 20 minutes, the patient would have had catastrophic brain damage or death. The stab wound to his abdomen was serious, but not immediately life-threatening. The bleeding in his brain was. I'd saved his life by refusing to back down. 3 days later, the patient woke up. That's when we found out who he was. Dominic Chen, age 29. CEO of Chen Technologies, the company that had just revolutionized quantum computing encryption. Net worth at the time, $2.4 billion. He'd been at a charity event in Koreatown when someone tried to rob him in an alley. He fought back. They stabbed him and ran. The hospital administration went into panic mode. Suddenly, everyone wanted to know who had treated him, who had saved him. Dr. Patel gave me full credit in her report. Dominic asked to see me. I remember walking into his private room. They'd moved him to the VIP wing, where everything was cream-colored and silent and smelled like expensive flowers. He was sitting up in bed, still pale, bandages visible under his hospital gown. "Nina Reyes," he said, and his voice was hoarse from the intubation, but his eyes were sharp, intelligent. "They tell me you're the reason I'm alive." I just noticed something the doctor missed, I said awkwardly. "Anyone would have done the same?" "No," he said. "They wouldn't have. Morrison is one of the best emergency physicians in the state. But you saw something he didn't. And more than that, you fought for me when you had every reason not to. You risked your career to make sure I got the right care." He paused, studying me. "Why?" I didn't know how to explain it. "Because you're a person. You deserved someone to fight for you." Something shifted in his expression. "What year are you in nursing school?" "I'm finishing my degree part-time. I work 3 jobs to pay for my mother's cancer treatment, so it's taking longer than usual." He didn't say anything for a long moment. Then, "When you graduate, I want you to come work for me." I laughed. I actually laughed. "Mr. Chen, I'm going to be a nurse. You run a tech company. I also have a family, a household staff. And I've learned that the people you trust to take care of you when you're vulnerable are the most important people in your life." He met my eyes. "You have integrity, Nina. That's rarer than intelligence. When you graduate, call me. I'll have a position for you." He handed me a business card with his personal cell phone number written on the back. I took it to be polite. I never expected to use it. 3 years later, my mother died on a Wednesday in March. Pancreatic cancer. We'd fought it for 4 years with everything we had, and it still won. The medical bills bankrupted me. Even with my nursing degree, even working full-time at St. Catherine's, I couldn't keep up with the debt collectors. I lost our apartment. I was living in my car, showering at the hospital, eating vending machine food. I was 26 years old and I had nothing. That's when I found Dominic's card in my wallet, wrinkled and faded, but still there. I stared at it for 3 days before I called. "Nina Reyes," he said when he answered, and I could hear the smile in his voice. "I wondered if you'd ever use that number." I need help," I admitted, and my voice cracked. "I'm sorry. I don't know why I'm calling you. Where are you?" I told him. 45 minutes later, a black Tesla pulled up next to my Honda Civic. Dominic got out wearing jeans and a Stanford hoodie, looking nothing like a billionaire. He took one look at my car, packed with garbage bags full of my belongings, blankets in the back seat, and his expression became very still. "Come with me," he said quietly. I followed him to a coffee shop. He bought me the first real meal I'd had in a week. And then he listened while I told him everything. My mother's death, the debt, losing everything. When I finished, he was silent for a moment. Then he said, "I'm going to make you an offer, and I want you to really think about it before you answer." "Okay. I need a private nurse, someone I trust, someone with integrity who isn't part of the world I live in, where everyone wants something from me." He leaned forward. "I'll pay you $180,000 a year, full benefits. You'll live on my property in a private guest house. Your job is to manage my health, coordinate with my doctors, make sure I'm taking care of myself despite my insane schedule. You'll travel with me when necessary, and in return, I'll pay off your medical debt. All of it. $340,000. I stared at him. $180,000 a year? You saved my life, Nina. This isn't charity. I need someone I can trust, and trust is worth more than money." He paused. "The world I live in, everyone has an agenda. Everyone wants access to my money, my companies, my connections. You don't, you never have. That's invaluable to me." I should have questioned it. I should have been suspicious. But I was drowning, and he was throwing me a life raft. Yes, I whispered. Yes, I'll do it. He smiled. Good. Welcome to the team. The next 2 years working for Dominic Chen was like entering another dimension where the rules of reality didn't apply. His primary residence was a compound in Malibu, 8,400 square feet, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Pacific, infinity pool, private beach access, wine cellar worth $2.3 million. My guest house was bigger than any apartment I'd ever lived in. 2 bedrooms, full kitchen, balcony with ocean views. The first night, I stood on that balcony and cried. But Dominic wasn't like the wealthy people I'd imagined. He worked constantly. 18-hour days were normal. Board meetings, investor calls, product development sessions, charity events, congressional testimony about tech regulation. He barely slept. He forgot to eat. He ignored his body's signals that he needed rest. That's where I came in. I managed his medications. He had chronic migraines from stress. I coordinated with his doctors. I made sure he ate actual food instead of just surviving on coffee and adrenaline. I traveled with him to conferences and made sure he didn't collapse from exhaustion. But more than that, I became someone he talked to. Late nights when he couldn't sleep, he'd call me to the main house and we'd sit in his library. 20-foot ceilings, first edition books worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, and he'd talk about the pressure. The weight of having 12,000 employees depending on him, the constant threats from competitors trying to steal his technology, the family drama. Oh, the family drama. Dominic's father, Richard Chen, was the founder of Chen Industries, a traditional manufacturing empire. Old money, conservative. He'd never approved of Dominic leaving the family business to start his own tech company. Saw it as betrayal. Dominic's mother had died when he was 12. Richard remarried when Dominic was 15, a woman named Caroline who brought her own son, Marcus, into the family. Richard legally adopted Marcus, making him a Chen. The family dynamics were toxic. Richard constantly compared Dominic and Marcus, pitting them against each other. Marcus resented Dominic for being the biological son, the golden child in Richard's eyes despite their estrangement. Dominic resented Marcus for taking his mother's place in their father's attention. When Dominic's company became worth billions, the resentment turned into something darker. Marcus is trying to convince my father to sue me, Dominic told me one night, whiskey in hand, staring out at the ocean. Claims I stole intellectual property from Chen Industries when I left to start my own company. It's bullshit. Everything I built from scratch. But Marcus knows that if he can tie me up in litigation, he can damage my company's valuation, and my father can potentially seize control through the family trust provisions. That's insane, I said. Why would your father want to destroy what you've built? Because I refused to bend to his will. Because I chose my own path instead of being his obedient son. Dominic's voice was bitter. In his mind, if he can't control me, he'd rather tear me down. I watched him in those moments and saw something I recognized. Beneath all the wealth and success, Dominic was lonely, isolated. He trusted almost no one because everyone around him wanted something, except me. I didn't want his money beyond my salary. I didn't want access to his business. I didn't want to social climb or network or use him as a stepping stone. I just wanted him to be okay. And slowly, over 2 years, we became friends. Real friends. The kind where he could admit he was scared of failure. Where I could tell him about missing my mother and not feeling like I deserved the life I was living. Where we could watch terrible movies at 2 a.m. and argue about whether pineapple belonged on pizza and just be human together. I never let myself think about it as anything more than friendship. He was Dominic Chen, billionaire, one of the most eligible bachelors in the world, constantly on magazine covers and dating models and actresses. I was Nina Reyes, his employee, the girl from East LA who grew up with nothing. The distance between us was infinite, or so I thought. The night everything changed. 3 weeks before the accident, Dominic threw a charity gala at his Malibu compound. $50,000 per plate, 200 guests, raising money for pediatric cancer research. Everyone who was anyone in tech and entertainment was there. I wasn't supposed to attend. I was staff. But Dominic had invited me to come to the pre-event dinner with his inner circle, his lawyer Margaret, his CFO James, his head of security, Victor, and a few close friends. "You're more than my nurse," he said when I protested. "You're my friend. I want you there." So I bought a dress from Nordstrom Rack. The first formal dress I'd owned in my life, dark blue, simple, cost me $180, and went. The dinner was in his private dining room, the one that overlooked the ocean through windows that cost $400,000 to install. I felt completely out of place, surrounded by people casually discussing stock options and private islands and political donations. But Dominic kept pulling me into conversations, making sure I was included, treating me like I belonged. Halfway through dinner, his father arrived. Richard Chen was 72 years old, silver-haired, imposing. Marcus was with him, 36, handsome in a cold way, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my car used to. The temperature in the room dropped about 40 degrees. "Father," Dominic said, standing, "I didn't know you were coming." "Marcus told me about your little event. I thought I should see what my son is wasting his money on." Richard's eyes swept the table, landing on me. "And who's this?" "Nina Reyes, my private nurse." Richard's lip curled. "You keep your help at the dinner table?" The words hit me like a slap. I started to stand, to excuse myself, but Dominic's hand landed on my shoulder. "Nina is a guest at this table. If that's a problem for you, you're welcome to leave." The tension was suffocating. Marcus smiled, a cold, calculated smile. "Still playing at Rebellion, little brother?" Marcus said. "How long until you realize this tech fantasy of yours is just that? Fantasy. Real wealth, real power. It's in the family business, where it's always been. Chen Technologies is worth 4 times what Chen Industries is worth," Dominic said quietly. "I'm not playing at anything." "For now," Richard said, "but empires built on silicon and code are fragile. When yours crumbles, and it will, don't come crawling back to the family expecting forgiveness." They left without staying for the gala. After they were gone, Dominic excused himself. I found him 20 minutes later on the beach, suit jacket abandoned, standing at the edge of the water. "I'm sorry," I said. "I shouldn't have been at that table. Your father was right. Don't." His voice was sharp, then softer. "Don't ever apologize for existing in a space you deserve to be in. My father is a cruel man who measures people's worth by their bank accounts and their pedigree. You're worth 1,000 of him." "Dominic," he turned to face me. "Do you know why I trust you, Nina? Because I saved your life? No, because you're the only person in my life who sees me as just me. Not my net worth. Not my company. Not what I can do for you. Just me." He stepped closer. "That's the loneliest thing about wealth. You never know if people genuinely care about you or just what you represent." "I care about you," I said, and my voice came out barely a whisper. "The person, not the billionaire." "I know," he said. "That's why—" He stopped, looked away. The moment stretched between us, full of things neither of us could say. "I should get back to the gala," he finally said. But something had shifted. We both felt it. The accident. 2 weeks later, Dominic drove up to Silicon Valley for a board meeting. It was supposed to be a day trip. Leave at 6 a.m., meetings all day, fly back that night. He called me from the road at 10 p.m. "Nina, I'm staying overnight. The negotiations ran long. I'll be back tomorrow afternoon." "Okay, did you eat?" A pause. "No." "Dominic, I'll grab something at the hotel. Promise. Make sure you actually do, and take your migraine medication before bed." "Yes, Mom," he said, teasing. Then, more seriously, "Thank you for always taking care of me." "That's my job." "It's more than that. You know it is." My heart was pounding. "Dominic, I'll see you tomorrow, Nina. We should talk. About things." "What things?" "About how I've been lying to myself about what I feel. About what you mean to me." His voice was low, intense. "About how I can't stop thinking about you." I couldn't breathe. "You're my employer." "I know, and I know that complicates everything. But when I get back tomorrow, I want to figure out how to navigate this. Because I can't keep pretending I don't. Static. The connection cut out. I tried calling back, straight to voicemail. I didn't think anything of it. Service gets weird on the coastal highway. At 11:43 p.m., Victor called me. Nina, there's been an accident. Dominic's car went off the road on Highway 1. They're airlifting him to UCLA Medical Center. It's serious. The world tilted. The hospital traumatic brain injury. Multiple fractures. Internal bleeding. They operated for 8 hours to relieve the pressure on his brain and repair the damage. He survived the surgery, but he didn't wake up. The doctors called it a medically induced coma initially. They were keeping him under to let his brain heal. But days passed, and even when they tried to lighten the sedation, he didn't respond. 2 weeks, then 3. I stayed at the hospital, slept in the family waiting room, coordinated with his doctors, held his hand and talked to him even though he couldn't hear me. Margaret came every day. James, Victor, other members of his team. They brought updates about the company, tried to keep things running in Dominic's absence. And then, on day 19, Richard and Marcus showed up with lawyers. We're petitioning the court to have Dominic declared medically incompetent, Richard announced. As his father and closest living relative, I'll be granted conservatorship over his person and his assets. Margaret's face went white. You can't do that. I absolutely can. My son is incapacitated. He needs someone to manage his affairs. Chen Technologies needs leadership. I'm family. I have every legal right. You want to destroy everything he built, Margaret said. The moment you have control, you'll merge Chen Technologies into Chen Industries and dismantle it. I'll save it from the risky ventures Dominic was pursuing. I'll protect the family legacy. This is bullshit, Victor growled. But the lawyers had the paperwork, the legal precedent. If Dominic didn't have a designated healthcare proxy or power of attorney, and he didn't, Richard could make a case for conservatorship. Unless there was someone with a stronger claim than a parent, a spouse. That's when Margaret pulled me aside. Nina, I need you to listen very carefully. The proposal. 5 years ago, Dominic told me something in confidence, Margaret said. We were in a private consultation room, just the two of us. After you saved his life, after he got to know you while he was recovering, he told me that if he ever needed someone to make medical decisions for him, someone he trusted completely, it would be you. I'm his nurse. That doesn't give me legal authority. No. But a spouse does. Margaret's eyes were intense. If you marry Dominic, you become his legal next of kin. You have the right to make medical decisions. You can block Richard's conservatorship petition. I stared at her. You want me to marry a man in a coma? I want you to protect him from his father. Richard will destroy everything Dominic built. He'll take Chen Technologies apart piece by piece out of spite. And worse, he'll make medical decisions based on what's convenient for him, not what's best for Dominic. This is insane. Is it? Margaret leaned forward. You've been by his side every day for 3 weeks. You know his wishes. You know what he'd want. Would he want his father controlling his life? No, but then marry him. We have a judge who will perform the ceremony. It's legal in California under these circumstances. And Dominic... She hesitated. Right before the accident, he called me. He told me he was planning to talk to you about his feelings when he got back. He wanted advice on how to navigate a relationship with someone he employed because he didn't want to create a power dynamic problem. He cared about you deeply, Nina. Tears burned my eyes. He said something like that to me on the phone, right before the accident. So you know this isn't coming from nowhere. If he could choose right now, he'd want you to have this authority. He'd want you to protect him. I looked down at my hands. They were shaking. What happens after he wakes up? I asked. If he wakes up? If he wakes up, the marriage can be annulled if he chooses. You won't have any claim to his money. The prenup will make sure of that. This is purely about medical and legal authority while he's incapacitated. She paused. But Nina, if he doesn't wake up, you'll have to make impossible decisions. About his care, about life support, about everything. I can't. You're the only one who can. The ceremony which brings us back to this moment. The hospital room. The prenuptial agreement. The judge in her black robes standing next to a man who can't speak his vows. I sign the papers with a hand that won't stop shaking. The judge performs the shortest wedding ceremony in history. Under California law, Dominic's prior verbal consent, documented by Margaret, and the emergency circumstances allow this to proceed. Do you, Nina Reyes, take Dominic Chen to be your lawfully wedded husband, to honor and care for him in sickness and in health? I do, I whisper. Then by the power vested in me by the state of California, I pronounce you husband and wife. Just like that, I'm married to a man in a coma. The lawyers file the marriage certificate with the court within the hour. By evening, Richard's conservatorship petition is denied. I am Dominic's legal next of kin, his wife. Richard shows up at the hospital at 9 p.m., Marcus in tow, and the rage on his face is terrifying. You opportunistic little bitch, Richard hisses. You think I don't see what this is? You manipulated my son when he was vulnerable, wormed your way into his life, and now you're stealing his fortune. I'm protecting him from you, I say, and my voice doesn't shake. I'm making sure he gets the care he needs and that his company isn't destroyed. You're nothing. You come from nothing. You have no right. I have every right. I'm his wife. Marcus laughs, cold and sharp. When he wakes up and realizes what you've done, he'll destroy you. You'll regret this. But Victor steps between us, and hotel security escorts Richard and Marcus out. Margaret puts a hand on my shoulder. You did the right thing. I look at Dominic, still and silent in his bed, and wonder if I've made the biggest mistake of my life. Weeks 4 through 7. Being married to Dominic Chen while he's in a coma is the strangest existence imaginable. Legally, I have authority over everything. His medical care, his household, his finances, though the prenup limits what I can actually access. And Margaret manages the business side. I move back into his Malibu compound because the lawyers say it looks better for the conservatorship defense if I'm living as his wife. But every night, I sleep in my guest house, not the master bedroom. It feels like crossing a line I have no right to cross. The media finds out about the marriage. It's a wildfire. Tech billionaire's mystery marriage. Dominic Chen secretly married before accident. Who is Nina Reyes? Reporters camp outside the hospital, outside the Malibu compound. They dig into my past, find photos of me from nursing school, interview people I used to work with. Some articles are sympathetic, others are vicious. Gold digger nurse traps vulnerable billionaire. The caretaker who became a wife. Love or opportunism. I stop reading them. Stop watching the news. Focus on what matters. Dominic. The doctors say his brain is healing, but slowly. They're cautiously optimistic, but they can't promise anything. He might wake up tomorrow. He might never wake up. He might wake up but be fundamentally changed. Memory loss, cognitive impairment, personality changes. Every day I sit with him, hold his hand. Talk to him about everything and nothing. Your company is doing okay, I tell him. Margaret and James are holding things together. There's a new product launch next month. The quantum encryption chip you were so excited about. They're naming it the Chen 7 in your honor. I tell him about the ocean, the weather, the stupid drama happening in the hospital staff break room. And late at night, when no one else is there, I tell him the truth. I'm scared, Dominic. I'm scared you won't wake up. I'm scared that if you do, you'll hate me for this. For marrying you without your explicit consent. For making this choice. My voice breaks. But I'd make it again. Because the alternative was letting your father turn you into a pawn in his game. And you deserve better than that. On day 43, something changes. His fingers twitch. It's barely noticeable. But I see it. I call the neurologist immediately. They run tests, check his brain activity. His response to stimuli is improving. He's emerging from the coma, Dr. Patel tells me. She's been consulting on his case. It could be days or weeks, but he's fighting his way back. I cry with relief. The awakening. Dominic opens his eyes on day 51. I'm sitting next to his bed, reading aloud from a book he'd been in the middle of before the accident, when I hear him make a sound. I look up. His eyes are open, actually focusing. Dominic? He blinks slowly, turns his head slightly toward my voice. Nina, he rasps, and it's barely a whisper, but it's his voice. Oh my God. Yes, I'm here. You're okay. You're going to be okay. I'm crying, reaching for the call button to alert the nurses. His hand moves, catches mine weakly. What happened? You had an accident. You've been in a coma for almost 8 weeks, but you're back now. You're back. The medical team rushes in. Examinations, tests, questions. Dominic is confused, exhausted, but responsive. His cognitive functions seem intact. His memories are fuzzy but present. It's a miracle. Over the next few days, he regains strength, starts to remember more. The doctors are amazed by his recovery. And then Margaret tells him about the marriage. I'm not in the room when it happens. I'm too afraid to see his reaction. When Margaret comes out, her face is unreadable. He wants to see you, she says. My heart is pounding so hard I think it might break through my chest. Dominic is sitting up in bed when I enter. He looks thin, exhausted, but his eyes are clear. Alert. Nina, he says. Hi. Silence, long and terrible. Margaret told me what happened, what you did. I'm sorry, I know it was... Thank you. I stop. What? Thank you for protecting me, for standing up to my father, for making the impossible choice. His voice is rough with emotion. I know what that must have cost you, the media attention, the judgment, the weight of that decision. I couldn't let him destroy everything you built. I know, and He pauses, looks away. Right before the accident, I was planning to tell you something. Do you remember our phone conversation? Yes. I meant what I said, Nina, about my feelings, about wanting to figure out how to navigate what was happening between us. He looks back at me. Finding out I'm married to you is strange, but not unwelcome. My breath catches. Dominic, I know we need to talk about all of this. About what happens next. About whether you want to stay married to someone you were essentially forced to marry to save. He tries to smile. But I need you to know, I don't regret that you're my wife. Not even a little bit. The prenup? Fuck the prenup. We'll figure everything out. But Nina, you've been by my side since the day you saved my life the first time. You saved it again by marrying me. His voice breaks. You're the person I trust most in this world. If I had chosen someone to marry under any circumstances, it would have been you. I'm crying again. You really mean that? Come here. I move to the bed. He takes my hand, the one with the simple silver band I bought after the ceremony, because it felt wrong not to wear a wedding ring. We'll do this right, he says. When I'm recovered, I'll court you properly. I'll ask you properly. And if you want to annul this marriage and start over, we will. But Nina, I'm in love with you. I have been for longer than I wanted to admit. And finding out you married me to protect me, that you've been sitting by my bed for 2 months talking to me, he brings my hand to his lips. I'm the luckiest man alive. 3 months later, Dominic's recovery is slow but complete. He has some lingering issues with migraines and fatigue, but neurologically he's intact. Richard tries to contest the marriage, claiming coercion. The case is thrown out of court within a week. Margaret had documented everything meticulously. Dominic testifies that the marriage was in line with his wishes and that he has no desire to annul it. Chen Technologies thrives under Dominic's return to leadership. The Chen 7 quantum chip launches to massive success. The company's value increases by $2 billion in a single quarter. Marcus tries to launch a hostile takeover. It fails spectacularly when Dominic reveals that he'd been documenting Marcus's attempted corporate espionage for years and hands the evidence to federal prosecutors. Marcus ends up under investigation. Richard's reputation is destroyed by association. Dominic and I go to therapy together, work through the complexity of our relationship, employer and employee, patient and caretaker, husband and wife, navigate the power dynamics, build something real and equal and chosen. He proposes properly 6 months after waking up, not in a hospital room, not out of legal necessity. We're on the beach behind his house, our house at sunset. He gets down on one knee with a ring he designed himself. "Nina Reyes Chen," he says, and he's smiling. "Will you marry me? Again? For real this time? Because you want to, not because you have to?" "Yes," I say, laughing through tears. "Yes, you ridiculous man. I'll marry you again." We renew our vows in a small Continuar 06 Thurin ceremony with only the people who matter. Margaret, James, Victor, Dr. Patel, the handful of friends who stood by us through everything. This time, when Dominic says, "I do," he's conscious, looking at me with absolute certainty, and when he kisses me, it tastes like second chances. We're at a charity gala at the Malibu compound, another fundraiser for pediatric cancer research. But this time, I'm not hiding in the staff area or feeling out of place at the dinner table. I'm standing next to my husband, wearing a dress that cost more than my first car, and I finally understand that I belong here. Not because of money, not because I married into wealth, but because Dominic and I chose each other, in the hardest moments, when everything was uncertain. We chose partnership over power, trust over suspicion, love over fear. Late in the evening, Dominic pulls me onto the dance floor. "What are you thinking about?" he asks. "That morning in the hospital, when I was standing next to your bed, holding the pen, trying to decide whether to sign the marriage papers." "Regret it?" "Not for a second." I look up at him. "You know what I learned from all of this?" "What?" "Wealth doesn't define anyone's worth, but how you use it, how you treat people, how you fight for what matters, how you choose to show up in the world, that defines everything." I smile. "You could lose every penny tomorrow, and you'd still be the person I love. Because you're good, Dominic, in ways that have nothing to do with your bank account." "Well, that's convenient," he says, grinning, "because I'm planning to give most of it away." "What?" "I've been working with Margaret on something, a foundation. The Nina Chen Foundation for Medical Advocacy. We're going to fund programs that train nurses and healthcare workers to advocate for patients who can't advocate for themselves, like you did for me. Twice." His expression becomes serious. "You changed my life by refusing to back down when you knew something was wrong. How many other people could be saved if more healthcare workers had that training, that support?" I'm stunned. "Dominic, your name, your legacy. This matters, Nina. You matter. And I want the world to know that." I kiss him there on the dance floor, surrounded by people who came to celebrate wealth being used for good. And I finally understand that the real fortune Dominic and I found wasn't measured in dollars. It was measured in trust, in partnership, in two people from completely different worlds who saw each other's humanity and refused to let anything, not money, not power, not even death, tear that apart. Later that night, after the guests have left and we're sitting on the beach watching the waves, Dominic asks me something he's asked 100 times before. "What are you thinking?" And I answer with the truth. That I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, with exactly who I'm supposed to be with, and that everything, all the pain, all the impossible choices, all the fear, was worth it for this moment. He takes my hand, the one with the ring he gave me, the one I chose to wear forever. "Yeah," he says softly, "it really was." And under the stars, in a house that once seemed impossibly far from my reach, I understand that the greatest wealth isn't what you own. It's who chooses to stand by you when everything falls apart, and who you choose to stand by in return.